Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm also grateful to the Documenta 11 curators, Okwi and Vizor, Utamita Bauer, Suzanne Getz, Mark Nash, Sarat Maharaj, and also to Hoga Buergel and Ruth Nowak, Caroline Bakrikiev, and to Adam Shimchik. Quite obviously, after that introduction, it's clear to see that it's been quite a journey, almost 20 years continuously, I realize. And I can often still hear Okwi laughing. When I first met the Documenta 11 team in 2000, in New Delhi, I must confess I was a bit skeptical. Okwi picked that up. And when I was leaving the meeting, he came out into the corridor all the way up to the elevator. And at the last moment, just before I entered, he suddenly embraced me with his long arms and said quietly in my ear, "I know you don't trust us, but I request you to please trust us and make a new work. Make anything that you'd like to do." I later thought that this was a good opportunity, as I had a few unanswered questions. The good thing about an unanswered question is that it's only made to oneself. No one cares. It doesn't matter what they are. You can shoot in the dark, get your hands dirty, think with your body, remember what you had forgotten to remember. In fact, in 1997, I had made a film, which you referred to, on the question of violence. That had also ended with a set of questions. I think the Documenta 11 curatorial team had seen this film, which had perhaps triggered them to invite me. In 2000, the film was shown at the Friedrichianum in 2002. I'm going to read a small part from the script of the film towards the end, which is based on a set of questions. It's abruptly extracted from the script. The script was framed, the part that I'm reading was framed within a semi-fictitious conversation with an unknown man. It goes like this. Can the non-violent decision create an entirely different technique for intervention? Use reason and not force, he replied. But if reason finds no response, use every opportunity to push your position and retreat the moment you realize that you're wrong. How can I push my position if I do not demonstrate my strength without force? The old monk took a while before he replied, but with another question. Can you find a way to persuade your opponent to retreat and at the same time genuinely enhance the dignity of your opponent? I could answer, but can you tell me how to triumph without being victorious? By showing that you're prepared to die for your cause, but without destroying your opponent, he replied. How can I be so deeply committed without believing that I hold the absolute truth? You can, because your absolute truth is in fact the relativity of truths, and it can only be achieved by perfecting the art and practice of nonviolence. It's easy to slide seamlessly from these questions in the 20th century to another eternal and beautiful question in the 15th century by Kabir, the poet, mystic, reformer, and weaver. Drop falling in ocean, everyone knows. Ocean falling in drop, a rare one knows. Listen, Kabir shouted, who calls out your name? Is it life or is it death? Who calls out your name? Comprehension usually happens momentarily. Comprehension can occur, create a stunning insight, and then can disappear, only to return again later. So perhaps confusion is only temporary. This recurring process can be quite calming because you know it's always going to return. So best is to be prepared and wait when it returns, or find the right way to wait. Also, for instance, the comprehension about death and meaninglessness can be quite useful. When you understood it for a while, it becomes so much easier to live and find meaning. In the Bhakti or Sufi tradition, there is an often used phrase, and it has many versions. In Hindi, it is, Jo dooba so par. The one who drowns in the river is the one who gets across. What is par? What is across? What lies there? God? Afterlife? Or really nothing much at all? It is interesting to speculate on the proposition that deep devotion can actually lead to detachment. Is that really possible? If so, how to understand it? In the context of accessing momentary comprehensions, what if the following? The factual and the fantasy, the intellectual and the emotional, the public analysis and a personal interrogation of the self, the expression of strength and the disclosure of vulnerability, the need to pursue clarity and to accept being confused and lost, the ability to articulate and the complete absence of voice, words, and expression. What if all of these came together, distinct and yet together, and then became visible? In a simultaneous constellation, what would happen then? What is that vocabulary, that form, that language? In the year 2000, just before Documenta 11, when the Documenta 11 team came to Delhi, I was obsessed with another question: how to look into the future, how to predict. Seeking to understand what was happening in India at that time and feeling disturbed by an atmosphere of super-articulation all around me, where every position, point of view, ideology was being super-articulated, but no one seemed to be listening or comprehending, I had shared in writing to the curatorial team the following questions. My shots in the dark at that time. I had wondered, even though everything around felt the same as it was, if you looked carefully, it really wasn't static. If you stepped back and saw, you could see a process of change. If you stepped back even further, then change is what seemed to be actually what is most consistent. And so that perhaps meant that understanding the passage of time could be the key. And so I wondered, what would help me understand the passage of time? Deeply, but instantaneously. Could it be poetry? Could poetry from the fault lines, from different lives and traditions, from varied regions and different points in time, would it help me put my finger on the passage of time? And if that were possible even momentarily, then would I be able to predict the future? As anyone who can understand change and the passage of time should certainly be able to predict the future. So could poetry cut through this super-articulation of ideological, emotional positions and prejudices? Could I make a prediction on the basis of poetry? Would I then be able to predict, for instance, the social and political map of South Asia of 2040? There were also always less lofty questions. Of course, the best way to seek answers is to walk and ask. And there's always somebody who is kind enough to explain and at least indicate the answers, but there's always somebody who does answer. The other, maybe simpler questions were, for instance, what is the difference between research and preparation? Would I see in a particular way if I researched and see in another way if I prepared? Would my instincts be different in each case? How to test it out? How best to compare the results? Is there a way to prepare for the ordinary and another way to prepare for the unexpected? How does a dancer prepare? Is there an unseen line through the center of the dancer's body? What happens to the audience when she finds it during a performance? If I find meaning, then does my audience find meaning too? And is it the same or different for each? And should it be the same or better that it be different? Over time, you find out that lives, memories, and testimonies are archived in many ways. You go up a hill, they archive in one way. You come down on the other side, and it's archived in another way. And since they are archived in many ways, they are also recalled in many ways. How does one locate, see, and represent the different methods of the archiving and recalling of pain? How to identify the gaps in the available narrative? Could there be different images for different kinds of silences? How do secrets and testimonies travel? In camouflage, sometimes over many miles into new lands and geographies, continuously abstracting or reincarnating, mutating, and transforming over decades, only to then be buried in the most intimate mark, tree, leaf, stone, pattern, object that you can find. Buried forever, until an unconnected event takes place that triggers the testimony to emerge again, to even burst forth, either in chaos or a resistance that can take us beyond suffering. How to follow this journey? Farmers have always named their seeds. They have people names, often of loved ones, like children. Multiple species of seeds are always filled with knowledge, just like children. Children also collect secrets. They can be very meticulously and deliberately hidden. A container is found and it is placed within. It could be anywhere, even in the wooden kitchen window from where mother pointed out, "Look, that's from where we saw the soldiers take auntie down the street 57 years ago." So the child remembers, of course, but auntie resides in the wooden window for eternity. That wooden window is the container of that morning, 57 years ago, and of every single day in time since then. If every moment contains the possibility of being alive and being dead, then could an acute awareness of every moment also create an acute consciousness of living and dying? If a crime continues to occur regardless of the enormous evidence available, then is the crime invisible or the evidence invisible, or are both visible but not seen? Central to the notion of crime is the question of evidence. All crimes are investigated by the police or the criminal justice system. Subsequently, only evidence which is defined as permissible by the law is allowed to be presented in court. All other evidence is dismissed as invalid. The carefully crafted text of the law tells us what is permissible, how to understand, what to conclude. But what happens if a crime continues to occur regardless of the enormous evidence available? The moment you ask this question, a new set of questions emerge. Perhaps we do not comprehend the crime fully. Is legally valid evidence adequate to understand the meaning and extent of a crime? What if the legal definition of valid evidence is itself incorrect? What is the actual scene of crime? Where lies its footprint? Is the crime always a single cataclysmic event, or is it expanding, accumulating? Which vocabulary can comprehend adequately the scale and extent of a crime? Could poetry be presented as evidence formally in a trial? If I do not understand the meaning of loss, its scale, its extent, its multiple dimensions, then how could I even know what it is that is lost? Loss must have, it seems, its own unique language, be it the loss of land, of rivers, of livelihoods, or the loss of voice, life, and freedom. Doubt perhaps interrogates intent, which perhaps creates content that maybe helps us find a language, a form, a series of different comprehensions, a deeper sense of the unknown. Can an institution be fluid and temporary without many physical assets? Can doubt internally and externally be the water that nourishes its roots? You may think a nomad has no home. Someone else may say that's not true. A nomad has a home. It's just that you don't see it. The nomad carries his home as he travels. Can you trace the path of a bird in the sky? Can a process be an institution? Can the institution disappear, reappear, reincarnate as fragile, openly vulnerable, deeply respectful, and unsure, and yet consistent? By the side of the Academy of Doubt, there is a tree in the middle of a vast circle of rice fields. The tree is surrounded by tall, thin grass that is so still that it seems like frozen lions. When the wind blows, they dance in every direction, creating a sound that enters even through the skin. As the sun rises and burns our shoulders, everyone moves towards it. Adjacent to the tree is a little house. When you step inside, you see that it is filled with seeds, each with their own first names. By the seeds are photographs of those who have disappeared but are not yet dead. Here lies the inadmissible evidence, not yet defined by the legislations of our time. This is the home of those who cannot sleep or speak. Here is also the reason why he left without an explanation. The newspaper is there, and so are all the notebooks with their wandering columns. Also loose sheets of paper with hundreds of thumbprints and signatures. Here you will find several land deeds, tax receipts, and maps that float in the air, and a basket that collects the flowers that fall from the tree. The walls are filled with thousands of images, oldest images. The now, just now images, and the newest images, all replacing each other in random regularity. And right across the floor is a wooden bench. The bench is made up of small pieces of wood from 9 trees. The tree of rain, the tree of death, the tree of sparrows and tubers, the tree of ancestors, the tree of hallucinations, the tree of the nomad, the tree of exile, the tree of insurgency, and the tree with no name. Nearby, alone, inside the forest, in an abandoned train carriage, a professor of mathematics living alone asks another set of questions. What is the vision from the heart of darkness, from the center of non-vision? If night has turned into day and day into night, then how to reconfigure and respond again? What is it that lies beyond when all arguments are done with? Which conversations begin then? And with whom? Thank you.